There's a biological trigger hardwired into every predatory fish that swims in North American waters, and it has nothing to do with what they see. In muddy water, when visibility drops to less than 6 inches, bass don't hunt with their eyes. They hunt with a sensory system so precise it can detect a single amino acid molecule diluted in thousands of gallons of water. What I'm about to show you exploits that system so effectively that it feels like cheating, and it all starts with 3 drops of something you can buy at any grocery store for $4. Anise extract, the same stuff your grandmother used to bake cookies. 3 drops in muddy water creates a feeding response so aggressive that fish will ignore every expensive lure in your tackle box and swim directly toward a bare hook. I've tested this in conditions where professional guides packed up and went home. I've watched it work when water clarity was so bad you couldn't see your hand 6 inches below the surface. And I'm about to prove to you exactly why this happens, using a method that a shrimp boat veteran from Louisiana taught me on a dock in 1987. If you're tired of fishing forums sponsored by lure companies, if you're sick of YouTube channels that are basically 30-minute commercials for Bass Pro Shops, hit subscribe right now. This channel exists to resurrect methods that the tackle industry spent 50 years trying to bury, because broke fishermen don't buy $200 worth of gear every season. The man who taught me this was named Raymond Thibodeau. Raymond spent 42 years working shrimp boats out of Duloc, Louisiana, down in Terrebonne Parish where the bayou merges with the Gulf. He wasn't some weekend warrior with a fancy boat. He was a commercial fisherman who needed to catch fish regardless of conditions because his family ate what he brought home. Raymond learned from his father, who learned from Cajun fishermen who'd been working those waters since before Louisiana was even a state. And what Raymond knew about muddy water fishing would make modern bass tournament pros look like amateurs. I met Raymond in the summer of 1987. I was 23 years old, thought I knew everything about fishing because I'd read some magazines and owned decent gear. Raymond was 61, looked like he'd been carved out of driftwood, and he was sitting on a dock absolutely destroying redfish, while everyone around him was getting skunked. The water looked like chocolate milk. Hurricane season had stirred up the Gulf, and everything within 20 miles of the coast was blown out. Guides were canceling trips. The local tackle shop had 3 guys behind the counter, arguing about whether it was even worth trying. Raymond had 12 redfish on his stringer by 9 in the morning. Fat ones, too. 4 to 7 pounds each. He was using a rod that looked like it survived World War II, and a reel that might have been manufactured during the Eisenhower administration. His bait was something I had never seen before. It looked like a chunk of cut mullet, but it was wrapped in what appeared to be cheesecloth that had been soaked in something dark and oily. I walked over and asked him what he was using. Raymond looked at me like he was trying to decide if I was worth talking to. Then he smiled and said, "Boy, you know what anise is?" I told him, "Yeah, it's a spice." He said, "It ain't just a spice, it's a damn dinner bell." Raymond's method was simple but specific. He would take fresh-cut bait, usually mullet or shad, and wrap it in a small piece of cheesecloth. Then he'd add exactly 3 drops of pure anise extract to the cloth. Not anise oil, not artificial anise flavoring. Pure anise extract, the kind you buy in the baking aisle at the grocery store. 3 drops. No more, no less. He'd let it sit for about 5 minutes to let the extract soak into the fabric, then he'd cast it out into muddy water and wait. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about fishing. Within 2 minutes of his bait hitting the water, you could see the surface start to dimple. Small disturbances, like something was moving beneath. Then bigger swirls. Within 5 minutes, there were visible wakes converging on his spot from 3 different directions. The water was so murky you couldn't see anything below the surface, but you could watch the fish arriving. Raymond just sat there, calm as could be, waiting. When his rod finally bent, it bent hard. 7-pound redfish, and it fought like it was personally offended. I asked Raymond why it worked. He told me something I've never forgotten. He said, "Fish in muddy water ain't stupid, they just blind. You gotta talk to them in a language they understand, and that language is smell." Then he explained what anise does that modern scented lures can't replicate. Anise extract contains a compound called anethole. It's an organic molecule that's incredibly persistent in water. Unlike water-soluble scents that disperse and dilute rapidly, anethole is partially oil-based, which means it forms microscopic droplets that suspend in the water column and spread slowly. In muddy water, where currents and sediment create turbulence, these droplets don't just sink or float away. They hang in the water like a cloud, creating a scent corridor that can extend 30 to 50 feet from the source. Here's where it gets interesting. Predatory fish have olfactory receptors that are specifically tuned to detect sweet, aromatic compounds, because those compounds often indicate the presence of crustaceans and bait fish that have been feeding on algae and plankton. Anethole mimics the chemical signature of these prey species, but it does it at a concentration that's impossible to ignore. 3 drops of pure anise extract in turbulent, muddy water creates a scent plume that registers to a fish's sensory system like a neon sign in the dark. But that's only half of the equation. The cheesecloth serves a critical function that most people miss. When you wrap cut bait in fabric and add anise, the fabric acts as a controlled release mechanism. Instead of dumping all your scent into the water at once, the cheesecloth holds it and releases it gradually as water flows through the fibers. This creates a sustained scent trail instead of a brief burst. Fish following that trail don't just get a quick hit of smell and lose it. They get a continuous gradient that leads them directly to the source. Raymond fished that morning for 3 hours. By the time he packed up, he had 18 redfish. The biggest was just over 8 pounds. Every single person within sight of him had either caught nothing or had gone home. One guy with a brand new bass boat and about $3,000 worth of electronics asked Raymond what lure he was using. Raymond held up his rig, the cheesecloth soggy and dark with anise and fish slime, and said, "This here cost me about 15 cents. The guy literally didn't believe him. He thought Raymond was messing with him and walked away, shaking his head. I went home that day and immediately started testing the method. I tried it on largemouth bass in muddy ponds, on channel catfish in turbid rivers, on crappie in stained reservoir water. I modified Raymond's approach slightly, experimenting with different carrier materials and concentrations. What I found was that the 3-drop rule was almost perfect. 2 drops didn't create enough scent presence in really murky water. 4 drops seemed to overwhelm fish in enclosed areas like small ponds. 3 drops hit a sweet spot that worked across multiple species and water conditions. Let me walk you through exactly how to do this because I want you to catch fish, not waste time figuring it out through trial and error. Start with fresh-cut bait. This works with shad, mullet, herring, or even chicken liver if you're targeting catfish. Cut your bait into chunks about 2 inches square. Take a piece of cheesecloth. You can buy this at any fabric store or online for almost nothing, and cut it into 4-inch squares. Place your bait chunk in the center of the cheesecloth square. Add exactly 3 drops of pure anise extract directly onto the bait. Fold the cheesecloth around the bait and secure it with a small rubber band or a piece of thread. That's it. You've just created a scent bomb that will outfish 90% of the lures on the market in muddy water conditions. Hook placement matters. Thread your hook through the cheesecloth and bait together, making sure the point is exposed. You want the scent packet to stay together, but allow the hook to penetrate cleanly when a fish strikes. Use a basic Carolina rig or a simple split-shot setup. Nothing fancy. The whole point is that the scent does the work, not the presentation. Cast this rig into muddy water near any structure where fish are likely to be holding. Docks, fallen trees, rocky areas, weed lines, anywhere predators wait in ambush. Let it sit. This is not an active presentation. You're not working it like a crankbait. You're letting the scent disperse and inviting fish to come find it. Give it 5 to 10 minutes in one spot before moving. If fish are present and feeding, they will find it. I've used this method in 7 different states over the past 37 years. Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, and South Carolina. I've caught largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, redfish, speckled trout, channel catfish, blue catfish, and striped bass with it. The only variable I adjust is the bass bait. Freshwater gets shad, or chicken liver. Saltwater gets mullet or cut shrimp. The anise component stays exactly the same. 3 drops. Every single time. The pushback I get when I teach this to people is always the same. They say it sounds too simple. They say if it really worked, everyone would be doing it. They say the professionals would use it. That's the entire problem right there. The professionals can't use it because their sponsors sell lures, not grocery store baking supplies. Tournament circuits have rules that subtly discourage prepared baits because tackle companies fund those tournaments. The whole system is designed to keep you buying new products every season, instead of using methods that cost almost nothing and work better. I fished a largemouth bass tournament in Arkansas 3 years ago. It was a small local event, nothing professional, just weekend anglers competing for a modest cash prize. The lake had been hammered by storms for a week straight. Water clarity was terrible. Most guys showed up, took one look at the conditions, and started complaining before they even launched their boats. I showed up with my Anise-soaked cheesecloth rigs and a cooler full of cut shad. 4 hours later, I had my limit. 5 bass, all between 3 and 5 pounds. I caught them in water so muddy that I couldn't see my bait 6 inches below the surface. The second place guy had 2 fish. Third place had 1. When I showed the tournament organizer my rig during the weigh-in, he looked at it like I'd brought a piece of garbage to a black tie event. He didn't disqualify me because technically there was no rule against it, but I got the distinct impression I wasn't welcome at future events. Here's what the tackle industry doesn't want you to understand. Muddy water is not a problem. It's an opportunity. When visibility drops, fish don't stop feeding. They shift their hunting strategy to rely more heavily on scent and lateral line detection. Every expensive lure designed to look realistic becomes useless. All that matters is whether you can create a scent trail strong enough to guide fish to your hook. A $3 bottle of Anise extract will last you an entire season and outperform a tackle box full of scented soft plastics that cost $10 to $15 per bag. I calculated this once. The average tournament bass angler spends approximately $1,400 per year on soft plastics, scent additives, and related tackle. A bottle of anise extract costs $4 and will prepare enough bait for 50 to 70 fishing trips, depending on how often you fish. The cheesecloth costs maybe $10 for a pack that'll last you 2 years. Cut bait is either free if you catch it yourself, or a few dollars at a bait shop. You're looking at maybe $20 total per season for a method that consistently outfishes guys spending 100 times that amount. Raymond Thibodeau died in 2004. He was 78 years old and had been fishing professionally or recreationally for over 70 years. In all that time, he never owned what you'd call modern tackle. He never bought scented plastics. He never owned a fish finder or a GPS unit. What he did own was a lifetime of knowledge about how fish actually behave, and that knowledge was built on observation and results, not marketing campaigns. The last time I saw Raymond, about a year before he passed, he told me something that stuck with me. He said, "The fishing industry sold people a lie. They convinced folks that fishing is complicated, that you need all this fancy gear to be successful. Truth is, fishing is simple. Fish are hungry. You make them smell food. They eat. All the rest is just salesmen talking." That's the heart of it. Fish are simple. They're driven by hunger, survival instinct, and sensory input. In muddy water, where they can't rely on vision, they become almost entirely scent-driven. Understanding that one fact makes you a better angler than owning $5,000 worth of gear. Raymond understood it. The old Cajun fisherman who taught him understood it. And now you understand it. Go to your grocery store tonight. Buy a bottle of pure anise extract. Buy some cheesecloth at a fabric store or order it online. Go to your local bait shop and get some cut bait, or catch your own if you've got the time. The next time the water in your area gets blown out by storms, the next time visibility drops to nothing and everyone else is complaining about conditions, you're going to go out there with your 15-cent rig and you're going to catch fish while they sit on the bank making excuses. I want you to do something for me. After you try this method, after you see it work, come back to this video and leave a comment. Tell me what species you caught. Tell me what the water conditions were like. Tell me if some guy with a $30,000 base boat watched you outfish him using grocery store supplies. Those stories matter because they prove that the old ways still work, and they work better than the expensive alternatives we've been sold. And if you've got an old-timer in your life who taught you methods like this, methods the tackle shops would never promote, share those stories too. Talk about your grandfather who fished with bread balls. Talk about your uncle who made his own stink bait in a bucket behind the garage. Talk about the guy at the lake who showed you something weird that actually worked. That knowledge is disappearing because we're not writing it down, we're not passing it on, and we're letting it die with the generation that remembers when fishing was effective, simple, and cheap. Subscribe to this channel if you want to see more of this. I've got a video coming on a Depression-era catfish bait that uses soured corn and costs about 50 cents per gallon. I've got another one on a topwater method from the Korean War that involves a wooden clothespin and some feathers. None of it requires a boat loan. All of it works. And none of it will ever be sold at Bass Pro Shops because there's no profit in teaching you how to fish for free.